This video is made possible by contributions to the Macrosty YouTube channel from viewers like you. Thank you. Hey everyone. In my last two videos I talked about downright terrible ports of Mortal Kombat games. However, I decided that for this video I wanted to talk about an actual good game. I'm also real tired of playing really crappy games. At the beginning of the 1990s, two main fighting games dominated the entire market, 1991's Street Fighter II and 1992's Mortal Kombat. However, a third game would soon enter the market, and while in the long run wouldn't enter the big three of fighting games, it ended up being really incredibly influential. That game is 1993's Virtua Fighter. The reason why Virtua Fighter was influential is because it was the first arcade fighting game to include 3D graphics. Virtua Fighter was loved by critics for its innovation and its ushering in of a new era of fighting games, and is now often considered one of the greatest games of all time. However, Virtua Fighter would not go on to be the staple 3D fighting game franchise as the first game would have made you think. That game was yet to come, and it wouldn't come for another year after. However, in late 1994, Bandai Namco would release the 3D fighting game that would truly usher in a new era of fighting games, a franchise that now extends to its recent 8th main entry, along with several spin-off games. But before we can talk about those games, we have to talk about We'll preface the video with a backstory on the game's development first. Tekken was released in arcades on December 9th, 1994 in Japan, February of 1995 in North America, and finally worldwide on May 12th, 1995. It would later get a PlayStation release and arrived on March 31st, 1995 in Japan, and then November 7th and 8th in the European Union and North America respectively later. Tekken was developed by Namco, a studio that went defunct but would later be reborn and revitalized into Bandai Namco, who continue to develop the game as we know it today. It is today now both a publishing and developing powerhouse, with games including the first 3 Dark Souls games along with Elden Ring and the upcoming Elden Ring Night Rain, Soul Calibur, Little Nightmares, Pac-Man, and also pretty much every anime game that you can think of. Tekken became just the 3rd 3D fighter ever on console, releasing just a little after both Battle Arena Toshinden and of course Virtua Fighter. Tekken received overwhelmingly positive reviews upon release, with its highest review coming from Maximum, who gave it a full 5 stars. Commercially, it did incredibly well. Even with it only releasing to PlayStation, it went on to become the first PlayStation game to sell 1 million copies. Director of Tekken, Katsuhira Harada, claims that the first game in total eventually went on to sell just shy of 3 million units. Tekken still had a long way to come if it ever wanted to surpass Virtua Fighter though, as Virtua Fighter 2 was considered one of the greatest games of all time and the greatest game of 1994. Of course, it wouldn't even take the rest of the decade for Tekken to become the dominant force. I'm going to briefly talk about the story for videos like these because I think that would be a welcome addition. Now, I'm going to save the prologue portion for when I cover the later Tekken games, which more fully go over the backstory of the Mishimas, the Mishima Zaibatsu, and other main important characters within the story to not make this section as convoluted as it could possibly get. To keep the mystery of the later Tekken games shrouded for those who haven't played the games yet, I'll only be covering the brief story on the manual and a brief introduction of our fighters. 8 fighters remain after defeating opponents in death matches all over the world. The King of Iron Fist tournament nears its end with the champion receiving a large sum of money. Which one of these 8 fighters will be the one to defeat Heihachi Mishima, the head of the Zaibatsu, to claim the prize? Our competitors are Yoshimitsu, a ninja from outer space and head of the Manji group, a thief ring who only steal from those who profit off of dishonest actions. He intends to take part of this tournament as a decoy while his subordinates steal the cash prize and redistribute the wealth to those in need. Michelle Chang, a daughter of a Native American woman and a Hong Kong man. Her father was sent by Heihachi to find an ancient treasure on a native island. In the process, he was murdered by Heihachi's men. Michelle takes part in the tournament for revenge on Heihachi. Martial law, a master of martial arts, a San Franciscan chef, and an assistant instructor of a martial arts school. He takes part of this tournament for the fame and the money. Jack 1, a super slaughtering military robot constructed by the Soviet Union, sent by the Russian military to foil a potentially devastating world-scale coup d'etat that one of the 8 fighters have planned. Nina Williams, an assassin trained by her mother and father, sent to assassinate Heihachi, although she may have other intentions hidden up her sleeve. King, an extremely strong masked wrestler who appears to be unstoppable. He takes part of the tournament to fund an orphanage that he helps operate, as he himself was once an orphan. Paul Phoenix, a skilled hand-to-hand American whose true self only comes out when he battles. He takes part in the tournament to find stronger opponents for himself. Or Kazuya Mishima, son of Heihachi and the protagonist of the game. He has entered the tournament in order to get the revenge he has longed for against his father, who threw him into a ravine when he was just 5 years old. So, who wins? Well, canonically, Kazuya defeats his adopted brother Lee as his first match, then he defeats Jack and King before fighting Paul in the finals of the normal fights. Going into this match, Paul considers Kazuya to be his equal. However, Kazuya goes on to defeat him to proceed to the final fight, Heihachi. Well, Kazuya wins. This is great news. I'm sure he'll be an outstanding individual with the money he wins. Right? Wait, what's he doing? Oh my. Well, I'm sure that won't ever happen again in this series. Alright, now that we've covered the development and the story of Tekken, it's finally time to talk about the presentation and gameplay. Presentation will be a shorter section than usual because unlike with awful ports of video games, this requires significantly less bitching about significant issues in a port. Now obviously, when grading presentation on actual graphics from a game that is 30 plus years old, it's obviously not going to compare to something like Tekken 8, which has the most up-to-date engine and most talented developers working on it day in and day out. But I have to say, Tekken 1 doesn't look horrific. Sure, the models when you're fighting are definitely not as polished as they are in later Tekken games, or hell, even the introductory cutscenes or character endings, but I still think they're better than Virtua Fighter, Mortal Kombat 4, and even Street Fighter EX, all of those series' first cracks at going 3D. The environments that are in the game are simple but effective, and all have incredible music tracks to go along with them, which starts probably my favorite part of all Tekken games, the music tracks. Every track that goes into these games is composed and produced so well that I have so many favorite music songs that are literally just from Tekken. In fact, I've only used songs from Tekken 1 for this video. My 3 favorites are Sichuan, Windermere, and the one you're probably going to hear later for the gameplay, Fiji. I think that all 3 of these songs really fit the stages that they are a part of. The most fitting for me, I think, is the song that's playing right now, which is the King George Island theme. Another similar thing that this game started a trend for in its later games is having a good announcer.
Good morning. Continue. Fight. Final round. KO. Perfect. Round 1.
The announcer soundbites in this game, along with 2, 3, 4, and Tag 1 specifically, have always been some of my favorite in gaming and are always a welcome addition in fighting games like this. That about covers the presentation of the game. Let's continue forward to the gameplay. Now obviously when you're analyzing Tekken 1's gameplay, you're going to notice that it's bare bones compared to much later Tekken games. Characters are missing moves, there's significantly less characters than there are now, and the gameplay is much faster and quicker than later Tekken games. However, I actually like some of these things. I like how much bare bones the move lists are in this game because it means that I don't have to take a significant portion of my time out of my day for like 2 weeks to learn one character. You can just pick up the game and figure it out as you go, or read the manual for a brief rundown on some of these characters' special moves. I like the roster as it is. It has essential Tekken characters. Except for you, Ganryu, there's a reason why nobody wanted to play your ugly pervert-ass self in Tekken 7. And it gives most of these characters a decent backstory as to why they're here fighting in the tournament. And I personally love the fast gameplay. I think overall 3 or Tag 1 has my favorite speed and overall gameplay, but Tekken 1 is pretty close to these games in terms of overall speed. There's not much I can complain about. Well, there is the one thing that I can complain about. Every single time you hit the floor in this game, you spend about 5 seconds laying on the ground, which often is enough time for the opponent to keep you on the ground with a jump punch or some other crap they can pull out of their ass. It's annoying. It's probably the only terrible thing that I notice about Tekken's gameplay. However, I can't overlook it because it's just so annoying to deal with every time it happens. Other than that, however, the rest of the gameplay feels pretty good. Moves aren't delayed, and most special moves are easy enough to pull off. I feel like this section isn't big enough, but that's probably because there's no extra fun modes this time like Tekken Force, Ball, or the Bowling mode like the later Tekken games have. It's just pure fighting for now, and even without these modes, it's still a pretty damn excellent fighting game. Well, that wraps up the gameplay section. Now on to my final thoughts of the game. I think that Tekken was such a massive stepping stone in not only the fighting games genre, but video games as a whole. While it's no longer the best fighting game in its respective series, the first game laid out such a fantastic foundation with its fighting, its music, and its vibe for the later games that I may or may not be covering in the future. Does it still hold up today? Kind of. While not as good as Tekken 2 or Tekken 3 even, I still think that it was an enjoyable game to play 30 years after it originally came out. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for sticking around to the end. The support on the first 2 videos has honestly been crazy to me. We're almost at 200 subscribers as of right now, so for that, thank you. I know I haven't been the best with uploading consistently, but I truly do plan on bettering that and making my content better overall with this next year. I hope starting off March with an upload starts a trend of at least a video per week, maybe. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help the channel, and it's also such a huge motivator to put out more content. I'm also thinking of streaming more in the future, so head on over to twitch.tv/Macrosty for eventual streams, and also Macrosty VODs here on YouTube for extra videos and stream VODs. I now also finally have a Discord server, which you can join from the link below. Thank you guys so much for watching, thank you for the support, and I will see everyone in the next video. Bye!